and I love this. It says, if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. If you're at peace, you're living in the moment.
Hello, welcome to my podcast, To Mic One Joey Stutes. I am Joey Stutes, and I'll be giving a mic to Rick David. He is a stage 3 prostate cancer survivor and founder of Ancan. Ancan is an online peer-to-peer support system for people with serious health conditions. How are you today?
Well, thank you very much. And you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good.
Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
So let's start with the beginning before the cancer part. From my research, you call yourself I will quote, addictive exerciser.
Yes.
But before the podcast, we just had like a 20-minute conversation all about boats.
So what would you like to know about boats? What can we share with our audience about boats?
That the thinner the boat is, the faster you can go. That's
and
always
the easier you can fall into the water. We didn't talk about that.
No, I mean, I would say it's highly recommended you know how to swim, because you don't want to wear a life jacket on a boat.
You can't row. It's very difficult to row wearing a life jacket. And in fact, as a sculler, you're, or even on a crew boat, you're exempt wearing a life jacket in most states. Yeah.
For what reason, though? I feel like it'd be like a safety.
Can't. The life jacket gets in the way of your movement. So the oars are safety devices. The oars will float, so they consider the oars to be safety devices. So,
but can it support a human though? I feel like it can.
It can.
Really? Okay.
Yes, it can.
Okay, then that's good to know. Next time I'm drowning, to grab an oar.
There you go. There you go.
Well, it kind of tied into a conversation I want to get into. So it says you were on 2 years of hormone therapy. Was it because of your prostate cancer?
Yeah, I did 28 months of hormone therapy. Actually, by the time it wears off, it's quite a bit longer than that. And prostate cancer is a hormone-fed cancer. In other words, the cancer feeds off testosterone. And so one of the treatments, if you have, it can be used earlier, but it's almost always used if you have stage 4, and it's often used if you have stage 3 prostate cancer, is to starve the body of testosterone. And they do that in one of 2 ways. Either it's chemical, so you'll take drugs which are reversible, or some people will have an orchiectomy to remove their testicles, and of course that's not reversible.
So let's talk about before the cancer. So what was your life before the cancer? Let's say like a month before you got diagnosed.
Well, I mean, I like to think that there was very little difference. I mean, I like to think that I just adapted, and I think that if you can approach cancer in that way, to not to allow the cancer to change you, but for you to try and change the nature of the cancer, it makes for a much more successful disease experience. Now, successful is maybe not the right word, maybe easier disease experience, because sometimes it can never be successful.
I mean, I don't have cancer, so I can't speak for everyone, but it seems like cancer affects everyone differently. Like some will get the chemo and, they start losing their hair. Like, especially like for women, it can be like a lot of mental, just losing your hair in general. Chemo can be really damaging to the health. So like you become depressed and like you don't have energy to do things. So it seems like in your case, you were able to be normal, quote unquote, I guess.
I think being normal is a function of your mental health and not a function of the drugs. Because the drugs that I took, you lose all your body hair. They cause depression. They cause the same symptoms that many women go through in menopause. So you have hot flashes, you have water retention. I mean, if there are any ladies listening who have experienced menopause, they'll recognize all these symptoms right away. The issue is how you deal with that. So one of our support groups focuses just on men with recurrent and advanced cancer, high-risk recurrent and advanced cancer. And the response to the drugs, to the therapy that I was on, are across the board. Some men handle them well, other men it drives them just crazy and creates anxiety, creates depression. Hormone therapy is kind of like slow drip chemo because it has many of the same side effects, except it takes longer for those side effects to be realized. What we try to do is to work with anybody who comes onto one of our calls. It doesn't matter whether it's for cancer or for multiple sclerosis or whatever it might be for, to help them manage their disease or their condition in a way that makes it easier for them to live from day to day.
How did you know you had prostate cancer?
Now, that's a good story. I had a doc who did not believe in PSA testing, and he was a very good GP, but he didn't believe in PSA testing, which I strongly oppose.
What is PSA testing?
PSA stands for prostate specific antigen, and it is a protein that's released from prostate cells, and it can be tested through just a blood test. And if that number is high, it means something's going on, which is not right. And then you do tests to figure out what's causing it to increase. And a lot of doctors felt that people were being overtreated as a result of having high PSA numbers. And we as advocates believe that PSA is only about information, it's not about treatment. And the doctors who treated people just on the basis of having high PSAs were in error. And that's come to be proven out over the last 10 to 15 years. But I had a doc who didn't believe in testing. And so by the time I figured out there was something wrong, the cancer had become more advanced than it needed to be. And I found out because I actually had a kidney cyst that I followed for a while. I can't even remember how the heck we figured that one out, but I had this kidney cyst, and my urologist did believe in testing, and he found out that my PSA was abnormally high, and we did the follow-up tests, and it turned out that I had pretty aggressive prostate cancer.
So you're saying that the PSA test is not an indicator that you have cancer, but it's something you should look into more.
It is, exactly. PSA is not an indicator of cancer, but it's a sign that something could be wrong. And there are several things that can lead to it, but one of those things is cancer. And for most men, we recommend that you get a baseline test at 40. And if it's all normal, don't worry till you're 45. And at some point, you need to start testing each year to monitor the disease. Because if you catch it early, it's a very easy cancer to address.
So when you say testing, do you mean getting a PSA test or getting a prostate?
PSA test.
Oh, but like you said that it's easy to get. It's just a blood test, right?
Exactly. Oh. There are other tests as well, but the blood test is sufficient initially.
Yeah, so you hear it that do not age over 40 years old and you're good to go.
Yep.
So you say that you got kidney cyst and then you got a prostate exam, and that's how you know you got cancer?
Well, what happened was I had a kidney cyst, and that got followed, and it got measured every 6 months. And my urologist said to me, when was the last time you had a PSA test? And I said, it was at least a couple of years. Oh, he said, I think we should test again. And it came back with a high number. Now, I had started getting tests at a pretty early age because I was living in Manhattan at the time, and I had a very good doc, and the tests had just come out and were being used. And I'd had a couple of scares along the way in terms of having high numbers, but they didn't turn out to be much. Although I think with what we know now, I would have probably pursued and learned more about why those numbers were high, and the cancer could have been there for a long time.
How long do you think you had the cancer for then? That was just sitting in your body?
It could have been at least 10 to 15 years before it was diagnosed.
Really? And you felt nothing at all that whole time?
No, many cancers, not just kidney cancer, not just prostate cancer, but many cancers, breast cancer included, are what they call asymptomatic. So you don't recognize, you don't have any symptoms. And in a cancer like prostate cancer, and oftentimes in breast cancer, especially if you don't feel a lump, the disease doesn't become symptomatic until it's so far advanced that it can't really be treated. So now, that's not always the case. And there are times when it is symptomatic much earlier. But many cancers are completely asymptomatic.
So you just found you had cancer kind of just a random chance?
Random to the extent that I should have been getting annual PSAs. My doctor didn't believe it was necessary, but I had a urologist who realized it was, and he spotted it.
So it's kind of like a mixture of luck and, I guess, technology and knowledge of what it could become. I
think it was probably more seeing the right type of doctor. Although I wasn't seeing him for any prostate issues, I was seeing him for a kidney issue. But he was smart enough. He was smart enough to test me, whereas the GP was not in favor of testing, mistakenly, in my view. If I hadn't have had that test, the cancer could very rapidly have gone to a point where it could have killed me within 3 to 5 years.
So I believe there are 4 stages. So the stage 3 prostate cancer as deadly as others?
Every cancer is different, and every treatment of cancer is different. So to compare stage 3 prostate cancer to stage 3 breast cancer or lung cancer is very hard. Some cancers, kidney cancer, for example, stage 3 is pretty lethal, because stage 3 means that the disease is locally advanced, and it's got away from the original site of the cancer. And in some cancers, like kidney cancer, you can't control it. You cannot control it. Other cancers, like mine, it still can be controlled. So that's it really depends on the cancer and the nature of the treatment for the cancer.
Okay, so you got diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, and then now you go on hormone therapy for 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so I did I did more than that. I did radiation, extensive radiation treatment, and hormone therapy. And I did that. I was going to do surgery, but the likelihood of success from surgery alone was very small for me. And so I knew I was going to face radiation and hormone therapy anyway, so I just dove in and did that off the bat. And I was, one of the lucky ones where, even though my cancer was advanced, that treatment has given me what we call a durable remission, because we really cannot talk about cure. We don't have a cure for advanced prostate cancer, for stage 3 or stage 4 prostate cancer. But we can put the disease into remission where hopefully it'll never come back. So I test now only once a year, but each year my disease could have returned.
So you basically have the cancer inside of you all the time, but it's just not doing anything right now.
That's right. That's right.
And
That's
then
right. The cells are just dormant.
Yeah. So you say you get testing, you get a PSA testing every day, or you get a prostate exam every year?
I get a PSA test each year.
Oh, so that's easy for you, for any person.
Very easy.
So how was it like being on hormone therapy then?
It was tough, like any treatment, but there are some good ways to deal with it. I was fairly lucky in that one of the best ways to deal with hormone therapy is exercise, and I'd always been an exerciser, so I didn't come to this treatment having to start to exercise, which is very hard for a lot of men. I was familiar with a lot of the side effects, so
what are some of the side effects or symptoms of hormone therapy?
Well, there are many.
Or what did you experience?
Well, weight gain is one. So obviously exercise is very good for weight gain. Muscle loss is another. And again, exercise works well with muscle loss. Depression is another. And I've dealt with depression most of my life. It's a genetic family issue for me. And so when I first became, when I had a serious bout of depression, I knew what to do. Whereas if you don't know depression and all of a sudden the black dog comes to visit, it can be devastating. And so a lot of men need help and in terms of how best to deal with the depression. Now, the depression oftentimes with prostate cancer is physiological. It's because you have no testosterone in your body. And so the certain receptors in the brain aren't getting fed the way they need to be fed in order to make proteins that keep you balanced. And, but that was something I was used to. I was also used to understanding what it is and what it takes to deal with a long-term illness, because I was a marathon runner, and that teaches you, one of the things with marathon running is it teaches you how to deal with an extended problem, an extended issue. You train to be able to go a long way. So I knew I had a long journey ahead of me, and that helped me mentally.
I mean, it must have been so hard if you're dealing with depression before, and then now you have this, let's say, extra, let's say, weight on your shoulders that was hormone therapy. That must have been even harder to.
I think it was easier because I recognized the depression and I knew what to do for it. If you don't recognize depression and it suddenly comes on you and you've never known it before in your life, it can be very, very hard to know how to respond. And this is where we see men who can become suicidal because they've never had that experience before. For me, I'd had the experience before. So I called up my doc and I said, I'm depressed. I was already on medication.
For depression?
For depression. And the doc said, well, increase the dose. So I increased the dose and it helped me. And then when that wave of depression relaxed, I went back down to a lower dose. I was lucky and I had no aversion to taking medication. Now, I tried taking medication earlier on in my life and it hadn't been successful, but since 2000, I'd been on regular medication and I'd found a good medication. So when I went on to hormone therapy in 2007, I already had a way to handle the depression. Again, Joey, so much of this is, I think, your attitude towards the disease. Even though I had serious disease from the day I was diagnosed, I was blessed in that I knew that I was going to handle it. And I knew that if I couldn't handle it, it was out of my control. I could do everything that I wanted, that I needed to do to combat this disease. But if that didn't work, it was out of my control. And so I'd also learned, and not that I was so good at it, but I'd learned how to live in the moment. And when you have cancer, it's very important to live in the moment. I have something on my desk that I keep. I tape it to the bottom of my screen, and I love this. It says, if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. If you're at peace, you're living in the moment. And there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, totally. It just seemed that you had prior experience to get to this point, that you were able to, I guess, get the diagnosis, but like relax about it, and whatever happens. So you're doing all the necessary steps. But I also would say you're a little bit luckier, because a lot of people have not dealt with depression before.
That's right.
And then they get diagnosed with X cancer, and that's pretty hard on you and the family and such. And then now you're going through hormone therapy or chemo or something, so that's even harder on the body. And then now you're toppled with depression. So much you can take in like a year time span. But like when you have depression, if you dealt with it, let's say single-handedly, like way back, it's better. But like now you're dealing with all these symptoms at the same time, and it's like you don't know what to tackle first. So it can be very difficult for any single person.
No, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, and that's why I say I think I was very lucky that I had some of these experiences beforehand. It made it easier for me to deal with the cancer than it might otherwise have been. And I see that now in helping other people deal with cancer. I was fortunate.
It's a state of mind that's very hard to, like, it's easy to tell someone that, but it's hard to like put it into practice.
I think about that all the time. I wrote to a guy this morning, a young guy, 43, was diagnosed, he's 46 now, 46 or 47, diagnosed 43 with stage 4 cancer, prostate cancer. And he just recorded a interview with an oncologist, with a medical oncologist that's on Euro Today this week. And he sent me the interview. And he's now saying to me, well, I don't know what's next in line, and I don't know what I'm going to do next. And I wrote back to him and I said, look, there's so much happening, just stay in the moment. And then I put after that, it's easy to say and it's very hard to do. I don't say that lightly. And, for people that are watching this podcast and they're saying, oh, easy for you to say, they're right. But I've worked at it. And I did work at it, and I think we can all make it part of our disease experience to practice staying in the moment, because it doesn't matter what the disease is. I think you're better off if you can stay in the moment. So if you're in pain right now, just remember that pain is in the moment. And hopefully there's going to be a time pretty soon when the pain will ease off. It may come back. Staying in the moment is huge.
I always say to have long-term goals, just to have something to look forward to, but always be prepared for things to change. Right. Because it's been more on a stay in the moment, but I would say more in the present time, and let's say a 3-month time span, just to, like I don't have cancer, so I don't know, but cancer can be very unpredictable. You could be fine today and then terrible for the next week. Or it could go into remission next week and you're fine for the rest of your life.
Right. Definitely agreed.
Yeah, so it definitely ties into you to stay in the moment, because you really have no idea what will happen in the future.
Definitely. All of the above, and definitely agreed.
Yeah, so I wanted to mention, so you mentioned exercise before. How come you had to create a program for people to exercise? Like, could you get a regular exercise regimen, maybe like a slower program, or like how is it different for a cancer person or coming out of hormone therapy?
Well, there's a lot of ways to answer that question. The first is that oftentimes when people have cancer, it's such a shock to their system that it throws them into anxiety and depression.
Are you talking about the cancer, or are you talking more of the treatments, or both?
I'm talking initially about just being aware that you have cancer for many people. And the immediate response for many people is not to exercise. They don't think about that exercise can necessarily help them. So we try to explain to people that a lot of times the anxiety and the depression can be helped with exercise. Go out, take a walk, try and get your blood, try and get your pulse up. Even if it's only 15 minutes, jump on an exercise bike, just do something that increases your pulse rate, and try and keep it elevated, because it's going to make you feel way better. Secondly, when you have cancer and you get into treatment, fatigue is a very, very frequent side effect. And if you're fatigued, you cannot exercise. What most people don't realize, and this is totally counterintuitive, is that if you can get out and do some exercise, even while you're fatigued, you're going to feel way better. So go out, take a little run, take a little walk, jump on the exercise bike, jump on the rowing machine, whatever it is that you can do to get that aerobic state to a higher level, it's going to make you feel so much better. And we have infinite testimonies to that. People will say, oh, wow, I didn't even think I felt so bad, but after I came back, I felt so much better. It happens time and time again, and it's documented. It's documented in many clinical trials. Back in 2007, when I was diagnosed, the evidence wasn't as good as it is now. But many scientists, researchers have studied the impact of exercise, and in most cases, provided that your doctor approves that you exercise, because you always have to make sure that exercise is compatible with your condition, you're going to feel way better. And now there are programs. I mean, Livestrong, for example, is a cancer program that the Y has all over the country, which teaches cancer patients how to exercise, and people feel better for it. They love it.
How is it any different from, let's say, a regular exercise?
It may not be different. It depends on your cancer and the trainers. There are certain qualifications that are oriented towards conditions like cancer, or like Parkinson's, or like MS, where the trainers will go through additional education on how to train people with a certain condition, because there are things you have to watch out for. And if you're in chemotherapy, maybe some exercises are good, some exercises are bad. If you have certain conditions, it can impact your bones and your bone strength. So you have to watch out. But I mean, I'll give you an example of one fellow who I've been working with now for many years, 5-6 years. He happens to be on our board. He's been through 30 cycles of chemotherapy. Most recently, 23 cycles, either 3 or 4 weeks apart. He came back to chemotherapy. This guy does a long hike the day after each chemotherapy session. So if he has chemotherapy, his monthly session on a Thursday, Friday, he'll go out and he might hike 10 or 15 miles. Now, he's unusual. But the fact is that if you can go out and walk 20 minutes after your chemo, you're going to feel so much better. There's an oncologist I once heard of in Chicago who actually infuses the chemo whilst his patients are walking on a treadmill, because he feels that the chemo is absorbed so much better that way. So, I mean, when I did my radiation, and I tell people this all the time now, try and get out and do a 15, 20-minute walk every day, if not more. I mean, I exercised every day through my radiation, and I exercised pretty much every day through my hormone therapy.
This also can tie into not only feeling better, but also feeling better mentally too.
Well, that's what I was saying before, because when you get that heart rate up, you're able to stimulate some of these proteins that the treatment has taken away from you. So if you have no testosterone in your body and you're not making some of the natural opiates, the serotonin or whatever that your brain makes, by getting your heart rate up, you can stimulate that and you can create that. And so you compensate for what the body isn't doing because it lacks testosterone or estrogen, as it may be for women, say, with hormone-driven cancers.
So when you do the hormone therapy and you're lowering your testosterone, don't you want to not exercise because you don't want to raise your testosterone, or just...
The exercise is not going to raise your testosterone. The exercise is going to stimulate other proteins in your body that the testosterone would have made had it been there.
Okay, total sense. So you created a program, I think, at the UCF?
At UCSF, yeah. I created an exercise program at UCSF, and the idea for that was what a dietitian does. And sometimes you'll go into to see your doc, and you need a consult with the dietitian, and the doc will refer you to the dietitian, because the doc doesn't have enough time to educate you about nutrition and diet. And I thought to myself, look, if you can have a dietitian that can educate you about diet and nutrition, why can't you get a consult with an exercise trainer who can educate you about the right way to exercise and encourage you to do it? And that was the program we started at UCSF. And it was very successful, and it continues right up until today.
I mean, when you explain why you created a program, it makes total sense. And I think another thing is that when you're a cancer person, you don't want to be in the same room as a regular person, because they might be better than you just because they're not dealing with anything. So I think it's nice to be in a room with other cancer people and everyone kind of understands each other. So like if you can't do this exercise, no one's gonna like look down upon you to understand, because they probably have been in that place time and time again.
Joey, that's a really good segue into what we do overall, which is that everything Ancan does is based on peer support. So every program we have relies on peers helping people with the condition to understand better their condition. And we truly believe that there is nothing as valuable as peer support, because the peers experienced it. And you can go talk to your doctor, and your doctor may be the expert, but the doctor hasn't experienced it. And the doctor may be overlooking something that other people have done with your disease. And you can learn about what they've done meeting with other peers. And that's the essence of what Ancan does. We put peers together, and we make you your own best advocate.
Yeah, so let's talk about Ancan. So you created the program for exercising. How did you come up with the Ancan?
I was attending a support group, a physical support group, regular support group. And about a year or so after we launched this exercise program at UCSF, I separated with my mentor, who was involved at ASF. He was a patient, but he was involved at UCSF, and he ran the physical group, and we went for various reasons our separate ways. And I sat there thinking about how was I going to provide support going forward. And I had a buddy, neighbor, who I'd supported through his stage 3 prostate cancer. And he had been in the virtual webinar business for about 10 years already. So this was creating rooms where you could meet with other people. And remember, this is long, long before we ever thought of COVID and doing what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And he said to me, he said, I think we should create something called RIC TV. He said, so to support prostate cancer. So I said, if it's for prostate cancer, I said, I don't think we can call it RIC TV. We may have to call it Prick TV. You may have to cut that bit out. But it set me thinking. I realized that for many people, physical support groups that meet in a room are not available. I'd seen this because I'd met men who lived on the Oregon coast and they couldn't get to a support group unless they were in an area like San Francisco for treatment, or they could stop by a group. I also knew there were people that had physical disabilities. It was too much for them to be able to physically move themselves to another location. And I knew there were people that had social disabilities, that they were agoraphobic, or they had too much anxiety to place themselves in a room with a bunch of other people, whatever it might be. I looked on the internet and there were only 2 groups at that time that were available. This was around 2010. One was for postpartum depression and the other was for diet. And I thought, we need to start creating a platform where people can meet together and talk to each other like you and I are talking, just like they would do in a physical room, and they can benefit from the peer support, et cetera, et cetera. I found a telephone group on the Inspire platform that was meeting for prostate cancer, and I got involved with that. And that grew, and we built that. And it became larger and larger until there were too many people for one call. And so we had to add another call. And then it became too large for that. So we had to separate that into different phases of the disease. And then in around 2013, I went back to this video idea and we started developing a platform like Zoom or GoToMeeting that we could talk to each other on. After about a year and a half, I just didn't have the funds to continue that. I was living in Northern California. Zoom was in beta, but there were other platforms. And we decided on Citrix GoToMeeting, and we innovated that. And we started creating these meetings, virtual meetings on GoToMeeting. Now, that's not unusual today, because since COVID came, everybody's aware that you can put a bunch of people together in a room. Back then, 6 years ago, nobody had ever heard of it. It was all like smoke and mirrors. And we said, okay, let's do this. And it became more and more successful. We were just using the GoToMeeting platform, which Ancan still uses today. We needed to expand that. We needed to find a way to fundraise. And so we became a 501c3 nonprofit in 2016. And our mission was to bring these virtual platforms to every condition that we could possibly find where it was needed, not just for prostate cancer, but we'd learned how to do it with prostate cancer. And so we started building on that, and we added more conditions. We added some, we lost some. But now today we've got 21 meetings a month for 11 different conditions. We've got 3 or 4 conditions we hope to add before the end of the year. And if there's anybody watching that wants to start one of these groups, we would love to work with them to start a virtual group for whatever your particular situation is. And to do that, we need a couple of things. We need 2 or 3 moderators, peers. So if you and a friend and maybe another friend think, oh, this is a great idea, and we need the ability for you to get to your community. We can reach the prostate cancer community because we know it well. But if you come to me with a rare disease, we don't know that community, but we hope you do because you may be an advocate in that space. And we'll work with you to train you, to show you how to create these groups, how to run a group, because we do it a little differently to other people. Mm-hmm. And then we need you to be able to tell your community that this exists and bring them in. And that's what Ancan is, and that's what we're doing. And we don't charge.
So Ancan just seems to be a platform for people to get together, and there's regular folks gather people of their disease and just talk about whatever they want.
Exactly. And some of the groups are very technical because people want to get together and they want to talk about the latest treatment. And some of the groups are much more warm and fuzzy. So, and we run a group, for example, for men only, 1 group a month. We call it Speaking Freely, which is a men only group for men with any type of cancer, And that group is to speak about everything except treatment.
Okay.
So what is it? It's really an emotional support group. But if we use that E word, we wouldn't get anybody. We wouldn't get a man to join it. So we don't call it an emotional group. We call it a Speaking Freely, and we get men coming in and talking about the issues in their workplace living with cancer or at home living with cancer, because we want to encourage them to share best practices and to learn how other people are dealing with issues who came before them, because most of the issues that people deal with, they're not the first person experiencing that. And if we can introduce you to somebody else who's experienced it before you, they may have tips and ideas how to make your life easier. And that's what we want to do. And we don't just do this for cancer. We have a multiple sclerosis group. We have a sarcoidosis group. We're trying to put together a lupus group. We need more moderators, but we're trying to put together a lupus group. We're trying to put together a Parkinson's group. We'll do it for any condition, and especially for rare diseases. We have 2 or 3 rare disease groups, but the value for rare diseases is enormous.
So do you go out and search for people, or do you are you just the launching pad and you just wait for people to approach you, or mix of both?
It's a mix of both. So if we have a disease condition on our radar, which right now might be lung cancer or Parkinson's or colorectal cancer, and we may have a couple of people that are interested in moderating, but we don't have a team, then we will try and recruit other moderators and put the team together. Other times people will come to us and say, can we set up a group on your platform? So there's a rare kidney cancer called renal medullary carcinoma. 70% of people with that cancer have sickle cell disease. And it's a pretty rare cancer. I think maybe 1 or 2% of all kidney cancers. So they came to us. So now we have a group for that. And it's a fascinating group. We only meet once a month. And we meet at 8 o'clock Eastern. And we will have people on there from all over the world, from as far away as the UK to Colombia, because they hear about this group and they want to come in and they want to know what's going on in their space, because they don't meet other people with RMC.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to find people that have, let's say, X cancer, because it's not like no one like projected out there. You can't just type in lung cancer patient, like there's no list or anything. And it's kind of difficult to find people because someone has to physically have the cancer and then search for, let's say, lung cancer support group. This I can say it can be challenging to find people, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that do want the support, but they just can't find it.
Well, that's a big issue, yes. But there again, if we're working with moderators, those moderators tend to be patient advocates. And if they're patient advocates, they know where to find like people. They know where the forums are. They have a following, just like you have a following. So if you wanted to start a group for your condition, you would come to us. You'd know that there were 2 or 3 people. And then from there, we'd add you to our list. You'd publicize the group. And before you know where you are, people are talking to each other and they're saying, oh, we have a group for this. And it meets once a month, twice a month, every week, whatever it is. And then you're putting together a room of people. And you have to be careful because the room can get too big.
Uh-oh.
Now we've got that problem with one of our groups right now. We've got a group that meets every week and we're getting 40 to 50 people in every meeting.
Wow, that's a good problem to have.
It is.
I'm going to assume that most of or all of the people that come are all men.
It depends on the condition. So in prostate cancer, yes, but we welcome caregivers. Caregivers are often overlooked.
And of course, definitely.
There's a huge, huge need to support caregivers. We have a cancer caregivers group. And I love that group because I feel that those people, they don't know where to turn to find the support that they need. And we provide that need. We provide that support. We meet that need, I should say. We have groups that we ran an ovarian cancer group for well over a year, and we hope to bring that back this year, but we lost our partner. So a lot of times we need that team of moderators, but that team of moderators is even better when it comes with an organization, because the organization already has footing. Now, what's an organization today? It can be a social following. It can be an informal group. But for some of our groups, we've affiliated with, for example, with the Ovarian, we affiliated with the National Ovarian Cancer Coalition, and so they had outreach. So we love to collaborate with other nonprofits. Interestingly, when we bring back the ovarian group, which we're trying to do right now, we're trying to identify moderators again. We want to bring it back as a GYN cancer group, because we feel that for ovarian cancer, it gets most of the attention, and there are other women's cancers that don't get the attention, and we want to try and widen the peer support for that.
You can get very detailed in terms of what group you can get. You can just say cancer, and they can cover hundreds of cancer, but then now you can go into.
Joey, we do that for, say, this Men Speaking Freely group, because we don't want to talk about treatment. So if we don't talk about treatment, it doesn't matter whether the cancers are different. It basically, we're asking people to talk about the issues they face when they're diagnosed with cancer, with the C word. And
so are you allowed to say the C word, or is that like banned?
Oh, you can always say the C word. And for the caregivers, it's the same thing, because a lot of times the group is actually for stage 3 and stage 4 caregivers, but the issues they face are very similar no matter what the cancer. At the same time, if you had a general cancer group talking about treatment and you had all different types of people in there, there may not be a lot of commonality.
Yeah, I mean, I totally experienced this, but I have a rare disease, and I tried talking in my rare disease family, and that's fine, but I found to be more relatable to just other rare diseases in general. And like you mentioned before, that there's different cancers, but we're all dealing with the same issues, whether it's at home or at work and stuff. So like we all have different diseases, but at the end of the day, we all have very similar problems. Maybe not like you said, like the treatments will be different, but we still have all the same problems, and we're still human, and we can still like talk and help each other out, because I know cancer is very widely, I mean, everyone knows someone that had cancer or had cancer, but it's still somewhat like not talked about in a way. Like you can't, it's like not an open conversation you can have unless you know the person or you're in a support group.
Right.
So it's definitely important to have a support group, because like if you know someone with cancer, you don't know if they want to talk about it or not. You have to like, someone has to break that ice and like, hey, you want to talk about it? And a lot of people are just afraid to do it. But when you go into these groups, they're going to be talking about cancer because that's the name of the group, or you have a general discussion. So that a general discussion, or you have a group that talks about treatment, so that going in and you're already comfortable. And I'm going to get to the same feeling that I do, is that when I go into these rare disease groups, I don't have to explain myself too much. Like everyone already understands. So it cuts out, let's say, 20 minutes of explaining to a person where you're going. So it's like you can start the conversation within 5 minutes. Like everyone introduce themselves, and you can have a great hour conversation without the whole introduction. And for me, it made me feel more comfortable and more at home, that you can express yourself without judgment.
Do you have a virtual support group, video chat support group for your rare disease now?
We don't really have one per se, but I do host gaming groups to gather people, and they have hosted a bunch of other Zoom type like groups, to like educate on like energy healing and other topics, but we don't have a like, let's say, a group to like just general discussion of just to talk with each other. I think it's more like off to the side, not like an official. So like sometime like the moms of the rare disease groups will get together and talk and such on their own time. Like they'll have their own Zooms, but like we don't really have anything official.
Well, think about it.
Yeah, definitely bring it up and see if there's interest in that, because since I am a guide, like I was in we have a family gathering once a year, and I was in the last gathering with males, and it was pretty quiet. So I don't know if it would be popular with the male population, because I don't know how it is in your groups, but male overall are not, they don't express themselves that much. And I get that's like one major thing to do. And so I don't know if it's worth doing it.
Well, there are a couple of things there. First of all, you're right. It's harder to get men to talk, but that's part of the expertise of the moderator. And if you're a good moderator, you can get people to come out of themselves. And we train our moderators. That's part of what we do when you set up a group with Ancan. We train you to try and draw people out, because the best support group meetings are when people are talking to each other, and not when a moderator is interviewing one person and then moving on to the next person and then moving on to the next person. The idea is to get people talking to each other, and the moderator is kind of like a tugboat pushing the conversation a little on one side, pushing it a little on the other side, and just getting it to flow through. And that's how we like to train our moderators. Secondly, we have a YouTube channel, as I think you know, and we record some of our meetings with the permission of the people that participate. And you can watch, you can see how the men participate and the women. And some men are pretty vocal, some men are not. We have mixed meetings.
I think the big key is to have a larger group. Because when you have a group of like when I was in a group of males before, very easy for someone to get quiet. And I was doing a lot of the talking, but like I didn't want to just because I wanted others to talk. And it was just difficult because it was like an awkward silence. And so I was like trying, but like the other were not wanting to talk. And so I think what makes it better with a larger group, especially with the rare disease group, is that we'll have like a large 20 to 30, but only like 5 to 10 will talk. And that's good enough because not everyone wants to talk, or maybe it's their first time and they're shy and stuff. Like sometimes it takes 2 or 3 meetings just for them to get comfortable to want to say something. Or, I mean, the other thing is that when you're on Zoom, there's always a 2-second time delay. Like when one person wants to talk and another person talks, and then they both talk and it's like quiet. And then like sometimes you get anxiety about that. And so I know it's easier to do it at home, but it's also a little intimidating to unveil, especially from the male side, to unveil their deepest.
Oh yeah.
Like just, I'll definitely try to see if there's interest in it. I'm just not sure if they're willing to do it, because when I host my groups, it's only like 3 or 4 people. And such, so it's like a low number, and it's like I want to keep doing it, but like I also want more participation. And there's so much you can do to market it yourself, or so it's like I don't know. I'll definitely look into it.
That it is a big issue in terms of marketing it, because we can help you set it up, we can give you the tips, but we don't know as I said earlier on, we don't know your population, we don't know your community. So we rely on our moderators to reach the community.
Is everyone for you around the same age, or is there like a huge age difference?
Big age differences, and in some of our groups, we actually have a focus on younger age groups, and we are very close, we think, to starting an AYA. Probably an AYA cancer group, but it might be an AYA, just a general AYA group.
Wait, what's the AYA?
Adults and young adults. Okay. No, wait a minute. Adolescents and young adults. Adolescents and young adults.
Okay. Okay.
But young adults is a pretty wide group. It now goes, I think, from everywhere from about 19 to 45. But we recognize that there's a different need in there to the rest of the community.
Well, I'm like you mentioned it earlier, like you don't call it an emotional support group. The wording helps too.
Absolutely.
It definitely helps to be more attractive to want to join. Before I take the mic away, is there anything you want to promote or finish off with?
No, I just would love people to visit our website, ancan.org. People can see that and trying to put together a virtual support group, and they can reach their community. Please talk to us.
Yeah, I'll definitely put all the links in the description below. Thank you, Rick, for coming. Thanks, everyone, for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.